guys. We're here in Greenland.
Trump's son flew to Greenland.
I can't assure you, you're talking about Panama and Greenland, but I can say this. We need them for economic security.
Trump changed the U.S. borders?
Canada and the United States, that would really be something.
Greenland, Canada, or Panama. Trump is clear about these territories. Either secure American interests in them, or they will become another U.S. state. If the United States actually occupied these territories, the area under Washington's rule would increase significantly. Currently, it is 9,833,520 square kilometers, while such a change would result in even more than doubling the area, as the total would be more than 22 million square kilometers. Thus, the United States would overtake Russia in terms of total territory. In the face of the megalomaniacal policies of Donald Trump and Elon Musk, such slogans are having a real impact on the American public, which is actually beginning to replicate this narrative. Even during his previous term, the American president jokingly said that Canada should belong to the United States or that he would buy Greenland.
So the concept came up and I said certainly I'd be. Strategically it's interesting. Eventually it's a large real estate deal. A lot of things could be done. It's hurting Denmark very badly because they're losing almost $700 million a year carrying it. So they carry it at a great loss. And strategically for the United States, it would be nice.
Today, however, these statements are much more forceful, and Trump himself does not deny the possibility of using the force of his army if he fails to secure business there.
Can you assure the world that as you try to get control of these areas, you are not going to use military or economic coercion?
No.
And can you tell us what is the strategy?
Yeah, I can't assure you, you're talking about Panama and Greenland. No, I can't assure you on either of those two. But I can say this, we need them for economic security. The Panama Canal was built for our military. I'm not going to commit to that now. It might be that you'll have to do something.
Donald Trump's son, or Donald Trump Jr., arrived in Nuuk, the capital of Greenland, on Tuesday 7th on January 2025 on his father's plane. The visit caused a stir among the island's residents, but also raised concerns in Denmark, the de facto ruler of the territory. Even Moscow is beginning not to understand what the American president is playing at, but Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov admitted that they are watching the situation closely. That's why we've gathered all the facts about American territorial expansion, whether it's possible and what President Donald Trump is realistically playing with Elon Musk. Last month, in response to rising tensions between the US and Canada, Donald Trump published a controversial post on his Truth Social platform in which he suggested, albeit jokingly, that Canada become the 51st state in the US. Despite the jocular nature of the idea, the former president announced that if Canada did not take action to curb drug smuggling and illegal immigration, the US would consider imposing a 25% tariff on goods imported from the country.
I said you have to close up your borders because they're coming in the northern border too a lot. Not like the southern border, but they're coming in the Canadian border a lot. And drugs are pouring in. Almost as importantly, drugs are pouring in, maybe more importantly, drugs are pouring in at levels never seen before, 10 times what we had. They're just pouring in. We can't have open borders. And I said to the president of Mexico and to Justin Trudeau, if it doesn't stop, I'm going to put tariffs on your country at about 25%. That's a very substantial tariff.
Canada and the US are highly interdependent. Canada benefits enormously from the US market, and the US benefits from Canada's rich natural resources. As much as 60% of the oil imported by the US comes from this country. Canada is also the largest foreign supplier of steel, aluminium, and uranium. In addition, Canada has up to 34% of the critical minerals and metals vital to US industry, including defense, making it an indispensable partner for US national security. What's more, If you look at a map, the US-Canada border is one of the longest in the world at 8,891 kilometers. It is considered one of the most peaceful interstate borders, but its course still poses challenges to the populations of both countries as it crosses areas where populations and economies are highly integrated. It is often difficult to determine which side of the boundary you are on, as the markings are poor and the boundary itself has no clear connection to the actual terrain, as you can now see from one resident's account.
So this is Peace Arch Park, right on the border. All those houses over there are actually in Canada. And walking up to the boundary marker. And here's the marker. So on one side is the United States. And here's the ditch, but this is Canada.
Another problem is Alaska, which poses a serious challenge to the US. To reach the rest of the country, Alaskans have to travel some 1,000 kilometers across Canadian territory. This creates additional costs, increases the price of goods, and limits the economic development of the state. Traveling through Canada also requires passports and other paperwork, which adds to the administrative burden, especially for Alaskans who regularly travel to the US. It is worth noting that more and more Canadians are now criticizing their own government and opting to emigrate to the US, which offers better wages and greater career opportunities. While one may agree with some of the arguments Trump makes, it is in fact the situation in Canada that is driving many citizens to seek better prospects abroad, with the president himself stressing that a US-Canada merger would be a great thing.
Canada and the United States, that would really be something. You get rid of that artificially drawn line, and you take a look at what that looks like, and it would also be much better for national security. Don't forget, we basically protect Canada.
The president's narrative is disputed by Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who wrote on his X profile that, quote, "There is not the slightest chance that Canada will become part of the United States." It didn't take long for Elon Musk to respond, even calling him a girl and letting him know that his opinion didn't matter. Nevertheless, opposition leader Pierre Poilievre is standing by Trudeau's story, and what exactly his opinion is, listen for yourself.
I've been very conscientious about putting the country first and avoiding dividing the message. So that said, I have the strength and the smarts to stand up for this country. And my message to incoming President Trump is that first and foremost, Canada will never be the 51st state of the US. We have a heroic history, a great people, and a very proud future ahead of us.
Trump wants to redraw the map of the Western Hemisphere, scaring not only Canada, but also Greenland and Panama. And why and what do the locals think? I have already answered you. A 2019 survey by researchers at the University of Copenhagen found that 67.7% of Greenlandic adults want independence from Denmark in the future. At the moment, the Greenlanders are in favor of their own independence rather than another affiliation, but they all agree that 50,000 people are not enough to oppose the interests of the big powers, so they have to agree with someone. And as you probably know, they are closer to Trump than to Xi Jinping or Putin. Greater control over Greenland could be useful to the United States because of its strategic location and resources. It lies on the shortest route from Europe to North America, which is crucial for the US ballistic missile warning system. A 2023 study found that 25 of the 34 minerals identified by the European Commission as critical resources are found in Greenland. These include materials used in batteries, such as graphite and lithium, as well as rare earth elements used in electric vehicles and wind turbines. This asset is of particular interest to one of the US president's closest associates, Elon Musk. Trump has warned Denmark, which currently owns Greenland, that if it does not decide to sell the island to him, he will decide to impose tariffs on it.
You look outside, you have China ships all over the place. You have Russian ships all over the place. We're not letting that happen. We're not letting it happen. And if Denmark wants to get to a conclusion, but nobody knows if they even have any right, title, or interest. The people are going to probably vote for independence or to come into the United States. But if they did do that, then I would tariff Denmark at a very high level.
Danish officials are not taking the matter lightly, and there is currently a serious debate in Denmark about how to get along with the Americans, as it is said behind the scenes that Trump actually wants to take over the icy island during his presidency. To this end, Danish Foreign Minister Lars Løkke Rasmussen has already signaled on the first day of 2025 that his country wants to discuss the issue in more detail with the new Trump administration. We are open to a dialogue with the Americans on how we can cooperate even more closely than before to ensure that American ambitions are met, Rasmussen told Reuters reporters. The US has long worked closely with Denmark in the Arctic and Greenland, where it has its northernmost military base, specifically the Pituffik base, formerly known as Fule, which the US has needed for years to control Russia, and before that, the Soviet Union. Greenland is already de facto occupied by the US, albeit on the basis of voluntary agreements between Copenhagen and Washington that give the Americans a free hand on the island, argues Peter Viggo Jacobsen, an expert at the Royal Danish Military Academy, in a statement to the Spanish daily El Mundo. The island's trade balance underlines this. In view of the melting glaciers and the opportunities offered by the Northern Hemisphere, Donald Trump wants to ensure American hegemony, and for that, he needs Greenland. Still talking about Panama and the Panama Canal, which once belonged to the United States and was built by the Americans, Trump is concerned about China's growing position in the ports there. He reminds us that 40,000 American workers were involved in its construction and that 5,600 of them died as a result of illness and accidents. Trump therefore warned that he would intervene if Panama did not stop its cooperation with the Chinese.
Look, the Panama Canal is vital to our country. It's being operated by China. China. And we gave the Panama Canal to Panama. We didn't give it to China. And they've abused it. They've abused that gift. It should have never been made, by the way, but that was a big mistake. Giving the Panama Canal to Panama was a very big mistake. We lost 38,000 people. It cost us the equivalent of $1 trillion, maybe more than that. Probably the most expensive, they say it was the most expensive structure, if we call it a structure, which I guess you can, ever built. And giving that away was a horrible thing.
In January 1990, President George H. Bush oversaw the removal of Panamanian President Manuel Noriega from power. The month-long military invasion, called Operation Just Cause, launched under the pretext of protecting US interests and security in the region, ultimately resulted in the deaths of 23 US soldiers, 150 Panamanian Defense Force personnel, and around 500 civilians, but the goal was achieved. Trump has no plans to turn Panama into another American state, but armed intervention against China's growing power, there is a reality. All the more so as 5% of the world's seaborne trade passes through the Panama Canal, which is crucial from Washington's point of view. The fate of Canada and Greenland is another matter entirely, and at no point can it be ruled out that Trump will realistically want to take over these territories, especially in the current era of new global border revisions. Time will tell what will happen in the end. Thank you for your attention, and until the next material, stay tuned. Cheers.